Why the galaxy now desperately wants humanity back. The massive crystalline dome of the Galactic Council's judgment chamber thrummed with tension as thousands of alien representatives from across the Milky Way filled the tiered seating. At the center stood Admiral Eleanor Hayes, the last official representative of humanity, her weathered uniform adorned with medals from battles most beings present hoped to forget. Her posture remained rigid despite the shackles binding her wrists, ceremonial, yet unmistakably real. Humanity has been found guilty of unauthorized technological advancement, cultural contamination, and willful violation of Containment Directive 12A, announced High Arbiter Voxtal, their voice resonating through translators in 100 different languages. The squid-like being's skin shifted through shades of crimson as 12 primary eyes scanned the chamber. The punishment is exile. Effective immediately, the Sol system is to be placed under complete quarantine. No contact, no trade, no diplomatic relations? Eleanor's face betrayed nothing, but her voice cut through the murmurs. You fear what you don't understand. You've always feared us. A Meridian diplomat rose, his crystalline exoskeleton catching the light. We understand perfectly well. Your species progressed from primitive technology to faster-than-light travel in less than 3 centuries. You've weaponized technologies we use for medicine. You refuse oversight. We refuse subjugation, Eleanor corrected. There's a difference. The chamber erupted in outrage, but Eleanor continued, her voice somehow cutting through the cacophony. You've made a terrible mistake. Not because humanity needs this council she turned slowly, meeting the gaze of various delegates. But because this council will soon discover just how much it needs humanity. As the guards moved to escort her away, Eleanor smiled, and not the smile of someone defeated, but of someone who knew something that no one else in the room had realized yet. Behind the High Arbiter's platform, Counselor Drav watched with concern. Unlike most of his peers, the tall, gray-skinned diplomat had advocated for caution in dealing with humans. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought among his kind. This is a mistake, he whispered to his aide. They aren't like us. They don't think like us. That's precisely the problem, his aide replied. As Eleanor was led from the chamber, the council broke into factions, some celebrating the exile of humanity, others already calculating how trade routes would change without human vessels and ports. Counselor Drav moved quietly toward an exit, avoiding the celebrations. He had studied humans extensively, and one thing troubled him greatly. In all their history, humans had never truly surrendered. Not really. Not when it counted. The journey back to Earth took 3 standard weeks. Eleanor spent most of it in her quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel, reviewing data and sending encrypted messages that would be her last official communications with the Council worlds. Her escort, a Taldarian officer named Grek, treated her with surprising respect. I fought against your kind once, Grek admitted on the 7th day of their journey. Near the Horsehead Nebula, Eleanor nodded. The Helios campaign, you remember? Humans remember everything, she said, her eyes never leaving the star charts on her screen. Especially our defeats. Grek's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. We did not consider it your defeat. 3 of our dreadnoughts for one of your scout vessels. My people still study that battle. Eleanor finally looked up. Then perhaps you understand why exiling us is dangerous. I understand that the Council fears what they cannot control, Grek said. And no one has ever managed to control humanity. When they reached the edge of the Sol system, 5 human warships appeared seemingly from nowhere, flanking the diplomatic vessel. Grek stiffened but made no move toward weapons. Your escort home, he said dryly. Eleanor stood. The beginning of the quarantine, you mean? The transfer to the human flagship was brief. As Eleanor prepared to leave, she handed Grek a small metal object. A simple coin with Earth embossed on one side. When it begins, she said, show this to any human ship you encounter. It might save your life. When what begins, Admiral? Eleanor just smiled and left. On Earth, the news of exile spread rapidly. In Geneva, the United Earth government convened an emergency session. The Great Hall buzzed with voices until Eleanor entered. Then silence fell. Is it done? Asked President Toru Ikeda, his lined face grave. Eleanor nodded. The Council has spoken. We have 5 standard months to cease all operations beyond Sol, dismantle outposts, and return our citizens. A senator stood. And if we refuse? Then they'll attempt to enforce their ruling, Eleanor replied. With a combined fleet that outnumbers ours 12-1. We could fight, said General Rivera, his voice hard. We could lose, Eleanor countered. Or worse, we could win and be left facing what's coming alone. The room fell silent again. President Ikeda leaned forward. You still believe your theory? Eleanor activated the central display. A star map appeared, with dozens of points marked in red spreading inward from the galaxy's edge. These are the anomalies we've detected over the past 5 years. The Council dismisses them as natural phenomena. They're not. They're shadows or traces of something moving through subspace, something large. The Council has better detection technology than we do, another senator argued. If they don't see a threat, they can't see it, Eleanor interrupted. That's what they don't understand. Whatever this is, it exists partially outside normal space. Our minds, our human minds, process reality differently than other species. We perceive patterns they can't. So what do you propose? Asked the president. Eleanor's expression hardened. We accept exile. Publicly, we comply with every demand. We bring our people home, shut down our outposts, and go silent. And privately, General Rivera asked. We prepare for war, Eleanor said. Not with the Council, but with whatever is coming from the dark. Over the following months, humanity appeared to accept its fate with surprising grace. Ships returned to Sol. Outposts were abandoned or destroyed. Trade ceased. Communication went silent. The great human diaspora reversed itself as millions returned to Earth and its colonies. The Council established a blockade around the system, a ring of monitoring, stations and patrol vessels designed not to keep aliens out, but to keep humans in. But strange things were happening throughout Council space. Ships disappeared along remote trade routes. Colony outposts went dark without explanation. And the anomalies that Eleanor had tracked grew more frequent and more pronounced. In his private chambers on the Council homeworld, Councillor Drav reviewed reports of these incidents with growing alarm. A pattern was emerging, one that matched predictions in classified human diplomatic communicons from years earlier. His aide entered, looking troubled. The latest scan of Sol shows something strange. What is it? Drav asked. Nothing, the aide replied. I mean literally nothing. No transmissions. No engine signatures. No artificial radiation. According to our instruments, there's no sign of technological civilization in the system at all. Drav stared at the data. That's impossible. There are 11 billion humans. They can't just disappear. The monitoring stations confirm it. It's as if they've gone completely dark. Drav turned to his private console and entered a series of commands. After a moment, he sat back, his expression grim. Or as if they're hiding, he murmured. Contact the High Arbiter. Something is very wrong. By the time the Council acknowledged Drav's concerns, the first attack had already occurred. A frontier world called New Hope sent a desperate distress call before all communication ceased. The response fleet arrived to find the colony destroyed, not bombarded from orbit as would be expected in a pirate raid, but torn apart from the ground up as if something had emerged from below. And in the darkness between stars, shadows were moving, drawing ever closer to the heart of Council space. Why the galaxy now desperately wants humanity back. 3 standard years had passed since humanity's exile. The Galactic Council convened in its grand chamber, but this time the mood was far from celebratory. Representatives from 17 worlds demanded answers about the increasing attacks on frontier colonies. The air in the vast dome crackled with tension. Another outpost has gone silent, announced Sub-Arbiter Lox, a thin-limbed being whose translucent skin pulsed with light as she spoke. That makes 11 in the past 60 cycles. No survivors, no distress signals, just silence. High Arbiter Voxtal's skin had faded to a pale blue, a sign of deep distress in their species. Our investigation teams report the same pattern at each site. No conventional weapon signatures. No radiation. The colonies appear to have been consumed. From the third tier of the chamber, a voice called out, Is there any evidence of human involvement? The question sent a ripple through the assembly. Councillor Drav stepped forward, his gray skin now lined with age markings that hadn't been there 3 years before. The Sol quarantine remains intact, he stated firmly. No human vessel has broken the blockade in either direction. Our monitoring stations confirm this. Then how do you explain that the attack pattern matches exactly the prediction models submitted by Admiral Hayes before the exile? The question came from Ambassador Turl, a longtime advocate for harsher measures against humanity. The chamber fell silent. On the main display, a star map appeared showing the spread of attacks alongside a second map, one from the human archives dated 5 years earlier. This is troubling, Voxtal admitted. It's more than troubling, Drav replied. It suggests the humans knew what was coming. They tried to warn us. Ambassador Turl's scales flushed with anger. Or they somehow engineered this threat. To what end? Drav countered. To be exiled from the galaxy they were actively colonizing? That makes no logical sense. The debate might have continued, but the chamber doors burst open. A junior aide rushed in, a serious breach of protocol that drew gasps from the assembly. Forgive the interruption, the aide said, breathless. But we've received an emergency transmission from the research vessel Enlightenment. They've discovered something in the ruins on Proxima Centauri 7th. Rolth stood motionless before the ancient wall, his environmental suit the only protection against the toxic atmosphere of Proxima Centauri 7. After 3 decades as a xenoarchaeologist, he had thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. The holographic recording from his expedition played for the emergency council. The camera panned across massive stone tablets covered in symbols no living being had seen for over 50,000 years, the writing of the Forerunners, the mysterious species believed to have seeded much of the galaxy's intelligent life before vanishing. As you can see, Rolth's voice narrated over the recording. These tablets appear to describe a threat the Forerunners called the Void Eaters. The translation is challenging, but we've deciphered enough to be alarmed. The recording zoomed in on a series of glyphs, which transformed into Council standard text through the translation algorithm. They came from between spaces. Rolth read, hungry for consciousness itself. We fought for 10,000 years, but they cannot be truly destroyed, only repelled. In our final act, we create the Guardians, Quares, a species unlike others. Aggressive, adaptable. Their minds form patterns the void cannot consume. They will watch. They will remember what others forget. When darkness returns, they alone will see it coming. The recording paused on an image carved into the stone, a crude representation of a bipedal figure. A human figure. In the council chamber, silence reigned until Voxtal spoke. This cannot be accurate. Humans evolved naturally on Earth. We have their fossil record. Rolth appeared on the screen, his four-eyed face grave. The Forerunners were masters of genetic engineering. They could seed and guide evolution across millennia. What better disguise for a guardian species than to have them appear to evolve naturally? This is preposterous, Ambassador Turl sputtered. You expect us to believe humans were created as some kind of weapon? Not a weapon, Drav said quietly. A shield. One we discarded. Far from the Council worlds, on the edge of explored space, Fleet Commander Nix watched the sensor readings with growing dread. His battle group, almost 30 ships stronger, was all that stood between the approaching darkness and the populated systems beyond. Anything on conventional scanners? He asked his sensor officer. Nothing, Commander. But the gravitational distortions are increasing. Whatever's out there, it's big. Nix had fought pirates, rogue AI collectives, and even human ships during brief border skirmishes. But this was different. The void ahead seemed to bend, as if space itself was being folded by unseen hands. All ships battle formation Delta, he ordered. Weapons hot, shields at maximum. The first attack came without warning. One moment, the void was empty. The next, 3 of his escort vessels simply vanished. No explosion, no debris, just gone, as if they had never existed. Then he saw the mirror shapes that his mind struggled to process, like holes cut in reality itself. They moved not through space, but through the underlying fabric of existence. Open fire, he shouted, but the energy beams passed harmlessly through the apparitions. More ships vanished. The comm system filled with screams cut suddenly short. In the last moments before his flagship was consumed, Nix had a single terrible thought. This enemy cannot be fought with conventional weapons. Only one species had ever suggested a different approach, the humans. Back on the Council homeworld, Drav worked late into the night, reviewing all data on the Sol system. Something nagged at him, a contradiction in the monitoring reports that he couldn't quite identify. His door chimed, and his aide entered. "Counselor," The emergency session has been called. The High Arbiter requests your presence immediately. What's happened? Fleet Commander Nix's battle group has been lost. All 30 ships and the Void Eaters are advancing toward the core systems. Drav closed his eyes briefly. Then we have no choice. Prepare my ship. I'm going to Sol. The quarantine War. Will be the death of us all if we don't break it, Drav snapped. Find me volunteers. Brave ones. We're going to speak with the humans. The journey to Sol took 8 days. The fastest Drav's ship could manage even with emergency protocols overriding safety limiters. They approached cautiously, expecting to encounter the blockade fleet. But the monitoring stations were empty. The patrol ships were gone. What happened here? Drav wondered aloud. Scan the system. Find the blockade fleet. His crew worked frantically at their stations. No sign of the fleet, Counselor. No debris either. It's as if they were never here. What about Earth? The colonies? The sensor officer looked up, confusion evident on her features. According to our scans, there's no technological civilization in this system at all. We detect the planets, but no artificial structures, no power signatures, no transmissions. That's impossible, Drav said. Scan again. Same results, sir. According to our instruments, humanity has vanished. Drav stared at the view screen showing the blue-green world of Earth hanging in space. It looked pristine, untouched. Take us in, he ordered. We need to see for ourselves. As they approached Earth, the mystery deepened. The massive orbital installations that had once surrounded the planet in my space elevators, defense platforms, shipyards, were all gone. The surface showed no signs of the sprawling megacities that had housed billions. Land near their former capital, Drav instructed. Geneva. The ship descended through Earth's atmosphere. Below them, forests and plains stretched where a city should have been. They set down in a meadow and Drav led the expedition outside, environmental suits protecting them from Earth's oxygen-rich atmosphere. Spread out, he ordered. Look for any sign of what happened here. They searched for hours, finding nothing but wilderness. It was as if humanity had never existed or had meticulously erased all evidence of their presence. As the sun began to set, one of the team called out. They had found something, a small metal structure half hidden among trees. It looked like a bunker of some kind, its entrance sealed with a heavy door bearing the emblem of United Earth. Open it, Drav commanded. The team worked on the lock, eventually forcing it open. Inside, they found a single room with a simple table. On the table lay a device more clearly of human design. When Drav approached, the device activated automatically. A hologram appeared, the face of Admiral Eleanor Hayes. Hello, Counselor Drav, the hologram said. If you're viewing this message, it means you've finally realized you need us. I'm sorry it took a catastrophe to convince you. Drav stared in shock. How did she know I would come? The hologram continued as if responding. You're wondering how I knew you'd be the one to break the quarantine. It was simple. Of all the council members, you alone actually studied us. You alone understood what we really are. Where are you? Drav asked. Where have your people gone? If you want those answers, you'll need to go where we've gone. Instructions are included with this message. Follow them exactly. The hologram flickered. And Drav, hurry. I suspect time is running out for the galaxy. The hologram vanished, replaced by a set of coordinates pointing to the outer edge of the Sol system or Pluto. Drav looked at his team. We go on. The fate of the galaxy depends on Findy. Why the galaxy now desperately wants humanity. Drav stood at the viewport of his ship as they approached Pluto, the distant dwarf planet barely visible against the black of space. According to the coordinates from Admiral Hayes's message, humanity, or what remained of it, are waited here. At the farthest edge of the Sol system, scanners detect a structure embedded in the planet's surface, reported his sensor officer. It appears to be some kind of base, but our readings are strange. Strange how? Drav asked, his four eyes narrowing. The structure registers on our instruments, then vanishes, then reappears. It's as if it's flickering in and out of our reality. A chill ran through Drav. Phase technology. The Council banned research into it centuries ago because of the risks. Humans wouldn't have had time to develop something this advanced, his first officer protested. Not in just 3 years. Drav wasn't so sure. If there was one thing he had learned about humans, it was never to underestimate their capacity for rapid advancement when backed into a corner. As they drew closer, a transmission broke the silence. Unidentified vessel, this is Pluto Outpost. You are entering restricted space. Identify yourself or face immediate defensive measures. Drav stepped forward. This is Counselor Drav of the Galactic Council. We come seeking humanity's help. The galaxy is under attack. A long pause followed. Then transmitting landing coordinates. Follow them exactly. Any deviation will be considered hostile. The ship descended toward Pluto's icy surface, guided by the mysterious signal. As they approached, the flickering structure solidified into view. A massive installation built into the side of a crater, its architecture unlike anything in Council records. They docked at an airlock that seemed to materialize just as they arrived. Drav led a small team inside where they were met by armed figures in sleek exosuits. Human figures. "Welcome to Outpost Sentinel, Counselor," said the lead figure, removing her helmet to reveal a woman with dark skin and silver-streaked hair. "I'm Commander Aisha Jackson. Admiral Hayes left instructions in case you ever arrived." "Where is the Admiral?" Drav asked. "Where is humanity? We found Earth abandoned." Commander Jackson gestured for them to follow, all in good time. "First, you need to see what we're facing." She led them through corridors that seemed to bend in impossible ways, eventually arriving at a vast chamber dominated by a holographic display of the galaxy. Throughout the display, black spots pulsed and grew dozens of them, spreading inward from the rim. "The Void Eaters," Jackson said. "We've been tracking them for decades. They consume consciousness itself, leaving nothing behind but empty husks of planets and ships." "Why didn't you warn the Council more forcefully?" Drav demanded. "We tried. Your people dismissed our data as faulty or manipulated. Even you, Counselor Ao, the most sympathetic voice on the Council Ao, voted for our exile." Drav's skin darkened with shame. "We thought you were being typically human, seeing threats where none existed, exaggerating to gain advantage in negotiations." "A convenient assumption," a new voice said. Drav turned to see a tall human male enter the chamber. Unlike Commander Jackson, he wore no uniform, only simple black clothing. His presence, however, commanded immediate attention. "Marcus Rivera," the man introduced himself. "Former general, now director of Project Guardian. Where is your fleet?" Drav asked. "Where are your billions? We need humanity's help to fight these Void Eaters." Rivera's expression remained impassive. "Why would we help the same council that exiled us? That treated us like dangerous children." "Because innocent lives are at stake," Drav replied. "Because whatever your grievances with the council, surely you don't wish to see the galaxy consumed." "Show him," Jackson said to Rivera. "Show him what it cost us to prepare." Rivera nodded slowly, then touched a control panel. The galactic map vanished, replaced by images that made Drav's heart stutter in their rhythm. Massive ships unlike any he had ever seen, weapons that seemed to bend light around them, and humans of billions of Thamu, living not on planets but inside enormous arc vessels hidden in the spaces between stars. "We never left Sol," Rivera said quietly. "We just moved where you couldn't find us. Into the phase space, the layer of reality where the Void Eaters travel." "That's impossible," Drav whispered. "Such technology would take centuries to develop." "Under normal circumstances, yes. But we had help. The Forerunners," Drav realized. "The ruins on Proxima Centauri 7th. They didn't just create humans as guardians. They left you instructions." Rivera nodded. "Genetic memory. Data encoded into our DNA, accessible only when needed. When the first Void Eater scouts appeared 7 years ago, the knowledge began to surface in dreams, in sudden insights. By the time your council exiled us, we already knew what was coming and what we needed to do." "The exile wasn't a punishment," Drav said, understanding dawning. "It was your opportunity." "Precisely," Commander Jackson confirmed. "It gave us the freedom to mobilize on a scale that would have terrified the Council had they known. We've spent 3 years building a fleet and weapons specifically designed to fight in phase space." "Then you'll help us?" Drav asked. Rivera and Jackson exchanged glances. "That depends," Rivera said, "on what the Council is willing to offer in return." Back in Council space, the situation had deteriorated rapidly. The Void Eaters had breached the outer defense lines and were advancing toward the core worlds. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy, entire planets going dark, fleets vanishing without trace. In the Emergency Command Center on the Council homeworld, High Arbiter Voxtel reviewed the latest reports with growing despair. "Central Command has fallen," an aide reported. "The Void Eaters have taken 3 more systems in the past day." "What of our weapons?" Voxtel asked. "Ineffective. Energy weapons pass through them. Physical projectiles disappear before impact. It's as if they exist partially outside our reality. The doors to the command center opened, admitting Ambassador Turl. The once proud diplomat's scales had lost their luster, and he moved with the slowness of defeat. The evacuation of Proxima Thule has failed, he reported. 2 billion souls gone. And still no word from Counselor Drav? Voxtal asked. Nothing since he breached the Sol quarantine. Voxtal's skin darkened. Then we must prepare for the worst. The humans are gone or unwilling to help. We stand alone. As if in answer to these words, alarms blared throughout the command center. Massive phase space distortion detected, shouted the sensor officer. Something big is coming through. On the main screen, a tear seemed to open in empty space. The assembled council members watched in horror, expecting another Void Eater assault. Instead, a ship emerged. Then another. And another. Hundreds of vessels. Their design unlike anything in council records, but unmistakably built with purpose and precision. Human precision. Incoming transmission, announced the communications officer, voice trembling. The screen changed to show a familiar face. Admiral Eleanor Hayes, older but unmistakable, her eyes as determined as they had been the day of humanity's exile. This is Admiral Hayes of the Human Defense Fleet to Galactic Council Central Command. We understand you have a Void Eater problem. We're here to help. Aboard the flagship Defiance, Eleanor Hayes stood on the bridge surrounded by her command staff. Beside her stood Counselor Drav, still trying to process the scale of what he was witnessing. You've had this fleet all along? He asked. Not all along, Eleanor replied. We've been building it since the first signs appeared. The exile just accelerated our timeline. Through the viewports, the human armada spread out in perfect formation. Each ship pulsed with energy that seemed to distort the space around it. Phase drives that allowed them to slip between normal space and the realm where the Void Eaters existed. The Council will never trust you after this, Drav said quietly. They'll see this as proof that exiling humanity was the right decision. Eleanor's expression hardened. Trust isn't what we're after, Counselor. Survival is, for all of us. Admiral, called her tactical officer. Void Eater fleet detected approaching the Council homeworld. Estimated time to contact 30 minutes. Battle stations, Eleanor ordered. All ships, prepare phase shields and dimensional charges. Drav watched in amazement as the human fleet moved with impossible coordination. How can you fight what conventional weapons can't touch? He asked. By touching them where they actually exist, Eleanor explained. The Void Eaters perceive consciousness as energy. They feed on it, but the human mind, our particular form of consciousness, is toxic to them. Because the Forerunners designed you that way, Drav realized. Exactly. Our weapons are extensions of that principle. Consciousness-infused technology. She turned to him with a grim smile. You exiled us because we were too aggressive, too adaptable, too unpredictable. It turns out those are exactly the qualities needed to fight an enemy that feeds on predictability. The first wave of Void Eaters appeared on the tactical display. Massive tears in space-time that conventional sensors could barely detect. But the human ships tracked them perfectly. All ships, Eleanor commanded. Execute Operation Lightbringer. Engage the enemy. As Drav watched, the human fleet split into precise formations and accelerated toward the approaching threat. The ships seemed to flicker, partially phasing into the same layer of reality where the Void Eaters existed, and for the first time since the inn. Why the galaxy now desperately wants humanity back. The Galactic Council's Grand Chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from every surviving world packed the tiered seating, their usual protocol forgotten in the face of unprecedented crisis. At the center of the chamber, where once Admiral Hayes had stood in chains, now stood a holographic display of the galaxy. Black regions marked territories already consumed by the Void Eaters. High Arbiter Voxtal's skin had faded to an ashen gray, a sign of extreme stress in their species. Beside them stood Counselor Drav and, most remarkably, Admiral Hayes herself. No human had addressed the full council since the exile. The situation is dire, Voxtal began, voice wavering slightly. In the past 3 standard months, we have lost contact with 27 systems. Our conventional forces have proven ineffective against these Void Eaters. A murmur ran through the assembly. Fear had replaced the arrogance that once defined council meetings. Yet there is hope, Voxtal continued. The human fleet has successfully engaged the enemy at 6 critical locations, pushing back the advance. Admiral Hayes has agreed to address this body regarding humanity's terms for continued assistance. Eleanor stepped forward, her uniform crisp and unadorned except for a single insignia, the emblem of Earth surrounded by stars. "Members of the Council," she began, her voice clear and unwavering. "3 years ago you exiled my species because you feared our potential. Today that potential is the only thing standing between this galaxy and oblivion." She gestured to the hologram. "The Void Eaters are not a natural phenomenon. They are ancient predators that feed on consciousness itself. They cannot be defeated with conventional weapons because they exist partially outside our reality." "Then how do you fight them?" called a voice from the assembly. "With weapons designed specifically for that purpose," Eleanor replied. "Technology that operates on the principles of consciousness itself. Principles the Forerunners encoded into human DNA thousands of years ago." This revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. Eleanor let the commotion die down before continuing. "We are not natural evolution. We are engineered or created specifically to combat this threat when it inevitably returned. Our aggression, our adaptability, our particular form of consciousness, these aren't flaws to be controlled. They're features deliberately designed for war against an enemy that consumes order and predictability." Drav stepped forward. "I have witnessed the human fleet in action. Their claims are true. They alone possess the ability to detect and harm the Void Eaters." "Convenient," sneered Ambassador Turl, rising from his seat. "They develop these special weapons just as this convenient threat appears, a threat only they can fight." Eleanor's expression remained impassive. "Your skepticism is noted, Ambassador, but the Void Eaters aren't convenient for anyone, at least of all humanity. We've been preparing for this war since before your grandparents were born." "Explain," demanded Voxtel. "The knowledge was always within us," Eleanor said. "Dormant genetic memory, activating gradually as the threat approached. For centuries, humans have experienced dreams and visions of darkness between stars. Our myths speak of demons that devour souls. Our greatest works of art depict battles between light and consuming darkness." She touched a control, and the hologram changed to show ancient human paintings, sculptures, and text from across Earth's history. All showed similar motifs of darkness-consuming worlds, light fighting back. We weren't consciously aware of our purpose, but it shaped our development nonetheless. When the first Void Eater scouts appeared 7 years ago, the knowledge became clear to those most genetically receptive. Scientists, military leaders. We began to prepare. "Why not simply tell the Council?" asked a Meridian representative. Eleanor's laugh was without humor. "We tried. Our early warnings were dismissed as human paranoia or attempts to gain military advantage. By the time we had irrefutable proof, the Council was already moving to contain us." "The exile," Drav said softly. "Yes," Eleanor confirmed. "The exile gave us what we needed most, our freedom from oversight to build and deploy our fleet without restrictions. It was in many ways exactly what we needed." Murmurs filled the chamber again. Voxtal raised a limb for silence. "What are your terms, Admiral? What does humanity require to continue this fight?" Eleanor's eyes swept the chamber, meeting the gaze of various representatives. "3 things. First, the exile ends now officially and permanently. Second, humanity receives full autonomy within Council space. Third, we take command of the war effort." The chamber erupted. Many representatives rose to their feet, shouting objections. Voxtel struggled to restore order. "You ask us to put the fate of the galaxy in human hands?" Turl demanded when the noise subsided. "The same humans we exiled for being too aggressive and unpredictable?" "Yes," Eleanor said simply. "Because those traits are exactly what this enemy fears. The Void Eaters consume order and predictability. They feed on civilizations that follow patterns. Humanity breaks patterns. We are chaos within order. Exactly what the Forerunners designed us to be." She gestured to the map again, where the black regions continued to spread. "You can reject our terms. You can maintain your pride and your control. But understand what that choice means. The end of all consciousness in this galaxy." Silence fell over the assembly. Even Turl had no response. "The Council will deliberate," Voxtal announced after a long moment. "Admiral Hayes, please withdraw while we discuss." Eleanor nodded and left the chamber, Drav following close behind. In a small anteroom, Eleanor paced while Drav watched. "They'll refuse," she said. "Their fear of us outweighs their fear of extinction. I'm not so sure, Drav replied. The Council is proud but not suicidal. They've seen what the Void Eaters can do. They've also seen your fleet in action. Eleanor stopped pacing. And yet they deliberate while worlds burn. It's the nature of democracy, Drav said. Even in crisis. Democracy is a luxury we can no longer afford, Eleanor replied. Not if we want to survive. Before Drav could respond, the doors opened. An aide entered. The Council has reached a decision. Your presence is requested, Admiral. When they returned to the chamber, Eleanor was surprised to find it completely silent. Every representative stood at attention, a sign of respect never before granted to a human. Admiral Hayes. Voxtal announced formally. The Galactic Council has voted. Your terms are accepted with one condition. Eleanor tensed. What condition? Oversight. A joint committee of human and council representatives to ensure war decisions are made with full transparency. Eleanor considered this. Oversight, but not control. The final decisions remain with human command. Voxtal's skin shifted to a lighter blue eyes relief. Agreed. Then we have a deal, Eleanor said. And not a moment too soon, she activated her wrist communicator. Hayes to all fleet commanders. Operation Lightbringer is a go. Full deployment. All sectors. Throughout Council space, tears opened in the fabric of reality as the human fleet emerged from phase space. Thousands of ships, Remmer far more than anyone outside humanity had realized existed, took up defensive positions around key systems. You had this many vessels ready? Drav asked in amazement. This is only the first wave, Eleanor replied. The Arcs are still in production. Arcs? Eleanor's expression grew grim. This war won't be won quickly, Counselor. We're preparing for a generational conflict. The Arcs will preserve civilization if we fail. Voxtal approached them, moving with the careful dignity of their office. The Council formally rescinds the exile of humanity. Welcome back, Admiral Hayes. Eleanor nodded acknowledgement, but her focus remained on the tactical displays showing Void Eater movements. I'll need immediate authority to redirect Council forces, and access to your industrial capacity. You shall have it, Voxtal assured her. What is your first command as war leader? Evacuation, Eleanor said without hesitation. We need to begin moving populations from the outer systems inward. Create a defensible perimeter around the core worlds. That will cause panic, objected Turl, who had approached behind Voxtal. Better panic than extinction, Eleanor replied. The Void Eaters are drawn to concentrated consciousness. Every densely populated world is a target. We need to thin out, make ourselves less appetizing while we build our strength. She turned to Drav. I need you as my liaison to the Council. You understand both sides. You can translate our decisions in terms they'll accept. Drav inclined his head. I would be honored. In the days that followed, the galaxy witnessed the full might of humanity unleashed. Shipyards that had been hidden in phase space were brought into normal reality, revealing construction on a scale that stunned even the most advanced Council worlds. Weapons platforms deployed around critical systems, and most impressive of all, the phase technology that allowed human vessels to slip between realities was gradually adapted to select Council ships. Eleanor established her headquarters on a massive station positioned at a strategic junction of trade routes. There, she coordinated the war effort with an efficiency that confirmed every fear the Council had ever harbored about human potential, and simultaneously justified her demand for leadership. Drav found her reviewing battle reports late one cycle, fatigue evident in her posture. You should rest, he suggested. Even humans require sleep. Later, she replied without looking you. Why the galaxy now desperately wants humanity back. The war against the Void Eaters had raged for 18 months. Across the galaxy, the once unstoppable darkness had been pushed back, contained to the outer rim systems. But the cost had been enormous. Billions of lives lost, hundreds of worlds abandoned or consumed, and the fighting continued with no end in sight. In the observation dome of the war station Vigilance, Counselor Drav stood beside Admiral Eleanor Hayes, watching the latest battle unfold on the massive holographic display. Human ships glowing with phase energy engaged the shadowy forms of Void Eaters around a distant star system. Another victory, Drav noted as the dark forms retreated. A temporary one, Eleanor replied, her face drawn with fatigue. Like most human commanders, she had barely rested since taking command of the war effort. They're adapting to our tactics, learning. I thought they were mindless consumers of consciousness. Nothing that evolves is mindless, Eleanor said. They have a kind of intelligence alien, yes, but capable of adaptation. The longer we fight them, the better they become at fighting us. Drav studied her with concern. In the months they had worked together, he had come to respect the human admiral deeply. You didn't expect this to be a quick war? No, she admitted. But I had hoped for more progress by now. We're winning battles but losing momentum. Our resources are stretched thin, and the phase drives require constant refinement as the Void Eaters evolve countermeasures. A junior officer approached and saluted. Admiral Director Rivera has arrived from Sol. He requests your presence in the strategy room immediately. Eleanor straightened, a new alertness in her posture. Did he say why? Only that Project Luminous is ready for review. Finally, Eleanor breathed. She turned to Drav. Join us, counselor. You should hear this. The strategy room was secured against all forms of surveillance. Only the highest-ranking officers from both human and council forces were permitted entry. At the center of the room stood Marcus Rivera, the former general who now directed humanity's most secretive research projects. Admiral, he greeted Eleanor with a nod. Counselor Drav, thank you for coming. Project Luminous, Eleanor said without preamble. Is it viable? Rivera activated the room's holographic system. Above the table appeared a schematic for a device unlike anything Drav had ever seen. The consciousness amplifier, Rivera explained, based on Forerunner principles recovered from the genetic memory of over 50 human subjects. In simple terms, it allows us to project human consciousness as a weapon on a massive scale. You've weaponized your minds? Drav asked, astonished. More accurately, we've weaponized what makes our minds toxic to the Void Eaters, Rivera corrected. The chaos patterns, the intuitive leaps, the emotional currents that the Forerunners engineered into our species. Eleanor studied the schematic with intense focus. Power requirements? Substantial, Rivera admitted. A dedicated antimatter reactor for each unit. Effective range? In theory, an entire star system. Drav couldn't contain his shock. You're proposing to deploy a weapon that affects consciousness across an entire system? The ethical implications, are less concerning than extinction, Eleanor interrupted gently. I understand your concern, counselor, but we're not altering other species' consciousness. We're projecting our own as a shield. Like a psychic umbrella, Rivera added. Protection, not control. Drav wasn't entirely convinced, but he held his peace. Throughout this war, humanity had introduced technologies that pushed boundaries the Council had long considered sacrosanct. Yet each time the alternative had been worse. How many can we build? Eleanor asked. With current resources? Perhaps 50 units within 3 months. Enough to shield the core worlds while we construct more? Eleanor nodded. Begin immediate production. Priority 1. As Rivera left to implement the order, Drav turned to Eleanor. This changes the nature of the war. It gives us breathing room, she corrected. Time to develop a more permanent solution, which is? Eleanor's expression grew distant. The Forerunners believed the Void Eaters couldn't be destroyed, only repelled. I'm not convinced they're right. 3 months later, the first consciousness amplifiers were deployed around key worlds. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Void Eaters recoiled from protected systems, unable to penetrate the field of human consciousness that surrounded them. For the first time since the war began, civilian populations could sleep without fear. Ships could travel between protected worlds without escort. A fragile normalcy returned to the core systems of the galaxy. In the Galactic Council chamber, now relocated to the War Station Vigilance, representatives gathered to discuss the changing situation. The mood was cautiously optimistic. High Arbiter Voxtal, who had aged visibly during the war, called the session to order. Thanks to human innovation, we have achieved a stalemate. The protected zones remain safe, while our forces continue to engage the enemy at the boundaries. A stalemate is not victory, pointed out Ambassador Turl. One of the few voices still critical of human leadership. We remain confined to a fraction of our former territory. Key resource worlds remain beyond our reach. The ambassador raises a valid point, Eleanor acknowledged as she entered the chamber. All eyes turned to her. Despite the months of brutal warfare, she moved with the same purposeful energy she had always displayed. A stalemate is not enough, which is why I've called this session. She approached the central platform and activated the holographic display. A new star map appeared showing not just the current front lines but a series of arrows pushing outward. Operation Sunrise, she announced. A coordinated offensive to reclaim the outer systems and drive the Void Eaters from our galaxy entirely. The chamber filled with excited murmurs. Voxtau leaned forward. You believe this is possible? The Forerunners themselves could only repel the enemy, not defeat it. The Forerunners lacked certain advantages, Eleanor replied. First, they fought alone. We fight as a unified galaxy. Second, they lacked the phase technology we've developed. And third, she paused. They lacked desperation. She expanded the display to show a massive device, far larger than the consciousness. Amplifiers already deployed. This is the Luminous Core, a scaled-up version of the technology currently protecting our worlds. But instead of creating a defensive shield, it will generate an offensive pulse. A wave of targeted consciousness that will drive the Void Eaters not just from our systems, but from this phase of reality entirely. You can't destroy them, Drav stated. It wasn't a question. No, Eleanor confirmed, but we can exile them, just as the Council once exiled humanity. Force them into a deeper phase of reality from which they cannot easily return. The power requirements must be enormous, observed a Meridian scientist. Beyond enormous, Eleanor agreed. We'll need to harness the energy of a star. Specifically, a red giant nearing the end of its life cycle. She indicated a star on the Mappa 1 in the contested zone between human-protected space and Void Eater territory, Castria's star. Old, massive, and already unstable. We'll construct the luminous core around it and channel its energy for a single massive pulse. The star will be destroyed in the process, Rivera added, joining Eleanor on the platform. But its sacrifice will save countless lives. The Council representatives exchanged glances. What Eleanor proposed was bold beyond measure and devastating in its implications. The destruction of a star was no small matter, even one nearing its natural end. The logistics of this operation, Voxtau began, are immense, Eleanor acknowledged. We'll need every available ship, every resource we can spare. The construction of the luminous core must be our civilization's single focus. And if it fails, asked Turl, then we retreat to the protected systems and continue the stalemate, Eleanor replied honestly. We survive, but confined to a fraction of our former territory, perhaps indefinitely. Silence fell over the chamber as the representatives contemplated this future. I move we approve Operation Sunrise, Drav said suddenly, rising to his feet. With full resource allocation. Seconded, called another representative. Voxtau looked around the chamber. Those in favor? Hands, tentacles, and various appendages rose across the assembly. Even Turl, after a moment's hesitation, raised his scaled hand. The motion passes unanimously, Voxtau announced. Operation Sunrise is approved. Construction of the luminous core began immediately. Around Castria's star, a massive structure took shape. A lattice of phase-enhanced metal surrounding the aging red giant like a skeletal cage. Human and Council ships worked side by side, defending the construction teams from Void Eater attacks that grew more frequent, as if the enemy sensed the threat. Aboard the command ship Defiance, positioned at a safe distance from the construction, Eleanor watched the progress with Drav at her side. We've come so far, the counselor observed. 3 years ago, the Council exiled humanity as a threat. Now we pin our hopes for survival on your species. Ironic, isn't it? Eleanor said with a faint smile. That the very traits your Council feared are our aggression, our unpredictability, our technological innovation, as would become our greatest assets. The Forerunners knew what they were doing when they created you, Drav replied. Did they? Eleanor's expression grew thoughtful. I wonder. Creating a guardian species is one thing, but giving that species free will,